Car crash in New Zealand leaves 3 Hong Kong tourists dead and another injured. The Federation of Students asked Tung Chee-hwa for help in arranging a meeting with Beijing officials. And signs of a possible meeting between Chinese and Japanese leaders on the sidelines of the APEC summit.
Good evening. 3 Hong Kong tourists have been killed in a car accident in New Zealand. Another passenger, also a Hong Kong resident, was seriously injured. Liz Yoon reports.
A rental van carrying 4 Hong Kong visitors overturned after colliding with a truck on a highway near Ludgate on the South Island of New Zealand. The 60-year-old driver and his 2 female passengers aged 61 and 56 were killed at the scene. A 59-year-old front seat passenger was injured and sent to a nearby hospital by helicopter. According to New Zealand media reports, the crash happened at a notorious intersection. The truck driver involved in the crash was reportedly shaken but not injured. The speed limit for that section of the highway is 100 kilometers per hour. The truck left skid marks stretching 50 meters long on the road, but it's not immediately known whether the accident has anything to do with speeding.
Shows you the level of carnage that can happen. This is at the extreme end for us.
A hospital manager told TVB News the survivor, Zhang Yat-chung, is currently in stable condition. He is a retired Deputy Chief Fire Officer of the Fire Services Department.
I don't know his exact injury. Reasonably comfortable, and he's talking, and he's eating, and he's on a general surgical ward.
Hong Kong's Immigration Department is now in touch with the Chinese Consulate General in Christchurch to keep abreast of any latest development. The department says it will render any necessary assistance to the victims' families. Liz Yun, TVB News.
It is day 41 of the Occupy protests, and demonstrators remain on the streets in Admiralty, Causeway Bay, and Mong Kok. The Federation of Students has written an open letter to former Chief Executive Tung Chee-hwa, asking him for help in arranging a meeting with Beijing officials over Hong Kong's political reform. Diane To reports.
Student leaders Alex Chow and Eason Chung delivered the letter to the office of former chief executives on Kennedy Road this afternoon. The letter asks Tung, who is now a vice president of the Chinese People's Political Consultative Conference, to help them arrange a meeting with central government officials in Hong Kong or Beijing to speak directly about the local situation.
Would like to have dialogue with the official in Beijing because starting from the movement, till this moment, we could see that, the SL government has no will and has no, legitimacy to handle the current constitutional issue.
Chow said the students respect the one country, two systems principle, but see the need to push for dialogue themselves because there's been a communication problem between the two systems.
We could see that from the past 7 years, if the Beijing government or the Beijing official only listen to voices from the SL government, the liaison office, and the local tycoons, it could not really reflect what is happening in Hong Kong.
Another person to receive the letter is Rita Fan, Hong Kong's sole representative on the National People's Congress Standing Committee. This comes after the student leaders were advised to scrap plans to visit Beijing during the APEC meetings, which are ongoing now. Stressing that their move is not a publicity stunt, Chow said they agreed to first seek help from potential intermediaries who are close to the central government. But they've turned down suggestions to have the meeting with Tung because he's not in charge of Hong Kong affairs. They hope to meet with Premier Li Keqiang, NPC Standing Committee Chairman Zhang Dejiang, or Basic Law Committee Chairman Li Fei instead. If the middlemen are unable to help, they said they would still try and go to Beijing by themselves. And if the central government doesn't respond to the protesters' requests, the students said the Occupy movement could last until June next year, when LegCo is expected to vote on a political reform package. Diane To, TVB News.
There is a strong possibility of a meeting between President Xi Jinping and Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe during the APEC summit in Beijing next week. in an apparent breakthrough in relations. The Foreign Ministry in Beijing said today China and Japan have agreed to resume political, diplomatic, and security dialogues. The two countries have also agreed to a crisis mechanism to prevent a dispute over the Diaoyu Islands, called the Senkakus by Japan, from getting out of control. They acknowledge different positions exist. While no meeting between Xi and Abe has been announced, it's now widely expected the two will hold a tete-a-tete on the APEC sidelines. However, it's unclear if anything substantive will be discussed. New engines of economic growth will be the focus of the summit meeting of Asia-Pacific leaders that begins in Beijing next Monday. But an initiative being promoted by China at a time when a rival U.S.-led trade deal has stalled may inject a note of rivalry into the annual summit that aims for consensus. Alan Booknia reports.
The two-day APEC summit of 21 countries is the first major international gathering in China since President Xi Jinping came to power. And it gives China a platform to assert itself as a regional leader. APEC's executive director expects this meeting to have a different focus than previous summits.
This used to be a region where trade grew and that pushed economies along. Now we're looking for other sources of growth. We've been looking quite a lot at infrastructure. We've been looking at the growing middle classes in a lot of East Asian and Latin economies and what that means for growth, growing domestic demand, more services, bigger role from small, medium enterprises.
A proposal being promoted by China, the free trade area of the Asia-Pacific, is part of an agenda that would include talks on cooperation in environmental protection, energy efficiency, and urbanization. It's part of Beijing's attempt to claim a bigger role in the U.S.-dominated global trade. Washington has been pushing the Trans-Pacific Partnership with 12 countries, including Japan, Canada, and Australia. But it doesn't include China, and those talks have stalled. The U.S. and some other governments have said they think China's trade initiative is at too early a stage for APEC and will just be a distraction. Alan Booknia, TVB News.
Mexico has revoked the contract for a high-speed passenger rail link project from a Chinese-led consortium. And that follows controversy over the uncontested bid. The Mexican government awarded the $3.75 billion US contract to the group led by China Railway Construction earlier this week. But the opposition in Mexico cried foul, accusing officials of favoring the project's sole bidder. President Enrique Peña Nieto's government now says it will hold a new auction. The rail link would connect Mexico City and the central city of Querétaro. Some say the about-face is an embarrassment for Peña Nieto ahead of his upcoming China visit.
Two former U.S. Navy SEALs are making conflicting claims over who killed Osama bin Laden. A Washington Post article identifies one man as firing the fatal shot, while another man reveals a very different story in a book that he wrote. Both claimants have triggered a debate over breaking the code of silence about secret military missions. Thursday's Washington Post quoted former Navy SEAL Robert O'Neill as firing the fatal shot. In it, O'Neill claims he stormed into the al-Qaeda leader's hideout in Abbottabad, Pakistan in May 2011 and shot bin Laden twice in the forehead. He said he shot him one more time after he fell to the floor and watched him die. O'Neill now works as a motivational speaker. At a recent seminar, he didn't mention the bin Laden report, but he did describe the most painful part of going to war.
Not getting shot at, and it's not stuff blowing up next to you. It's kissing your kid goodbye for what could be the very last time, and you're both aware of it.
But O'Neill's claim was countered by a source who quoted another SEAL who took part in the bin Laden raid. That source claims the fatal shot was fired by one of two other men who entered bin Laden's room before O'Neill ever got there. O'Neill did acknowledge shots were fired at bin Laden by at least two other SEAL team members. According to O'Neill, one of them is Matt Bissonnette, a former SEAL who wrote a book about the infamous raid entitled No Easy Day.
But Bissonnette's book never identifies bin Laden's shooter. Reacting to O'Neill's account in the Post, Bissonnette said, "Two different people are telling two different stories for two different reasons." While the duo continue to argue over who actually shot and killed bin Laden, both are being criticized for breaking the code of silence when undertaking secret military missions. As such, Bissonnette is now under criminal investigation by both the Naval Criminal Investigation Service and the Justice Department. He's accused of violating a U.S. espionage law because he did not seek official clearance before publishing his book. Bissonnette denies any wrongdoing. No word yet on whether O'Neill will face the same charges for spilling the beans as well.
U.S. Republicans are already making waves with the Obama administration after seizing control of Congress in Tuesday's elections. House Speaker John Boehner said their top three priorities for 2015 will be to abolish Obamacare, approve the Keystone Oil Pipeline, and to stop Obama from passing any immigration reforms. Before the end of this year, Obama is expected to use his executive authority to help millions of undocumented residents living in the United States with seeking jobs without fear of deportation. A move Boehner warned Obama to steer clear of and instead work on building trust.
Yesterday, we heard him say that he may double down on his go-it-alone approach. Listen, I've told the president before, he needs to put politics aside and rebuild trust. But I've made clear to the president that if he acts unilaterally on his own, outside of his authority, he will poison the well, and there will be no chance for immigration reform moving in this Congress. It's as simple as that.
In Belgium, about 100,000 people marched through Brussels to protest against government austerity policies Thursday. At least 14 people were injured during clashes between demonstrators and police. Protesters set fire to a van and threw rocks at police, who used water cannon to break up the disturbances. They're angered by government policies that will raise the pension age, end the automatic link between wages and inflation, and cut public services. The government says it is being forced to push through the measures to keep the budget deficit within European Union constraints. Thursday's march was the start of more than one month long campaign, which will be capped by a nationwide strike December 15th.
And still ahead in our newscast, details of a new URA project in Kwintong. The government issues work permit for the third runway at Chek Lap Kok. And Uruguay's president gets handsome offers for his car.
If you could do good things for other people, you had a moral obligation to do those things.
I gotta stop him now. This is my responsibility.
Saturday, November 15th. Panko 18 Mask Expert presents The Amazing Spider-Man.
哎呀，點解明明做咗防蚊措施啊，仲會咁？都養咗食蚊寄語啦。
花樽我成日換水㗎。
咦，係喎。冷氣機托盤冇積水啊。
裝水嘅容器有冚實啦。
花盆底點冇積水喎。哈哈，謎底已經解開，答案就喺呢度。落完雨都要清積水㗎，每個星期都做足檢查同清積水，啲蚊就冇位滋生啦。
Love Story, the new fragrance by Chloe.
Get ready for a new page in motorsport history.